Hi, and welcome back to the Hangout. Today, we're diving into one of the most polarizing figures in Gilmore Girls history, Dean Forrester. Dean was Rory Gilmore's first love, the tall, sweet, small-town boyfriend who seemed like every parent's dream. But as the seasons went on, that image began to crack. Some fans see him as a controlling, toxic partner who was never right for Rory. Others argue that Dean wasn't treated fairly by the writing, that he was twisted into something he never really was, just to move Rory's story forward. So today we're asking the question, was Dean Forrester really a villain? Or was he more of a victim? Before we jump in, just a quick reminder, if you enjoy these deep dives into classic noughties shows, please consider subscribing. It helps so much for a small channel like mine, and it means we can keep spending time together talking about the TV shows and characters we love. And of course, spoilers ahead for all of Gilmore Girls, including A Year in the Life. When we first meet Dean in Season 1, he feels tailor-made to be Rory's perfect first boyfriend. He's kind, dependable, and genuinely attentive to what makes her different. Their first meeting at school is especially telling. He recognizes her Rosemary's Baby reference, showing that he speaks her language of pop culture fluency. And when he tells her he noticed the way she read a book with total focus, it's not just about attraction. He's noticing her mind, her passions, her quirks, the essence of Rory Gilmore. At the time, it worked. He was tall, safe, reliable. He even built her a car. Dean was less a fully fleshed out person than an embodiment of Stars Hollow itself. Warm, steady, idealized. And for Rory's first kiss, first boyfriend, and first relationship, that stability was exactly what the show seemed to want for her. Now, I'll admit, as a teenager watching Gilmore Girls, I didn't feel it. I was always Team Jess, and Dean honestly bored me. I know he was supposed to be the perfect boyfriend, but to me, he felt too safe, too steady, almost like he belonged more in a parent's fantasy of Rory's love life than in Rory's own. But the cracks start showing pretty quickly. One of the earliest red flags comes in Season 1, when Dean tells Rory he loves her, and she doesn't say it back. He becomes aggravated and deeply frustrated that she can't match his feelings yet, which leads to their breakup. Now, you could read this as an impatient teenage boy moment, which it absolutely is, but it's also the first sign that Dean expects Rory to move at his emotional pace. That tension never really goes away. Dean's cracks really start to show in Season 2 with the arrival of Jess Mariano. What begins as mild jealousy in Season 1, think back to his unease over Tristan at Chilton, now intensifies into something more defining. Dean grows controlling, insecure, and increasingly threatened by Rory's interest in Jess, even when she insists there's nothing there. Ironically, his instincts turn out to be right. Rory and Jess do become a couple, but it's hard not to wonder whether Dean's possessiveness helped push her in that direction. Here's where things get complicated. Was this shift really organic, or was it a problem with the writing? Because if you watch closely, Dean often feels less like a fully fleshed out character and more like a plot device boyfriend. Early on, he's the perfect guy to usher Rory into romance. Later, he's written into the jealous, controlling type, conveniently creating tension so Rory can fall more deeply for Jess. By Season 4, Dean's story takes an even darker turn when he marries Lindsay straight out of high school. Instead of growing into adulthood, Dean ends up stuck in a rushed, ill-fitting marriage, and we hit what I think is Dean's lowest point. his affair with Rory while still married to Lindsay. And I don't know about you, but I still shudder at the image of Lorelai discovering what happened through the crumpled up bed sheets. That moment, raw, awkward, and deeply uncomfortable, cemented for me that Dean had gone from Rory's dream guy to one of her most damaging relationships. Their affair feels like the final nail in Dean's coffin for many fans. The sweet, small-town boy who built Rory a car has now become the married man sneaking around with his ex. But again, is that really Dean? Or is that the writers pushing him into whatever role they need at the time? Jess is the bad boy, Logan is the rich rebel. Dean becomes the cautionary tale. The what happens when you don't move on? It's also worth considering how Jared Padalecki's career outside of Gilmore Girls shaped how we think about Dean today. When Padalecki left the show in season 5, it was partly because he was stepping into a much bigger role, that of Sam Winchester on Supernatural. And over 15 seasons, Sam became one of the most beloved characters in modern TV fandom. Heroic, empathetic, and deeply complex. That massive success reframed how fans looked back at Dean. Instead of just remembering him as the boring first boyfriend, or the jealous husband who cheated, many began to see Dean as a character who'd been mishandled by the Gilmore Girls writers, flattened into whatever role Rory needed him to play, rather than being allowed to grow. In other words, the idea of Jared as a capable, layered actor made it harder to dismiss Dean entirely. And you can see that shift reflected in A Year in the Life. When Dean appears in the revival, it's not as the insecure, controlling teenager. It's as a man who's moved on, built a stable life, and looks back at Rory with kindness. After years of being remembered as the worst boyfriend, Dean is reintroduced as Rory's sweet first love, framed with nostalgia and grace. In that sense, Dean was reimagined, not just by the revival, but by the cultural shift that happened once Jared Padalecki was no longer the kid from Gilmore Girls, but the star of one of the biggest TV shows of the 2000s and 2010s. So, let's ask the big question: villain or victim? The villain case is straightforward. Dean could be jealous, controlling, and even destructive, cheating on Lindsay being the clearest example. At his worst, his relationship with Rory looked less like a romance and more like ownership. He didn't grow with her, and he often resented the parts of her that couldn't be contained by small-town expectations. But there's another side to it. Dean wasn't just a bad boyfriend. He was a teenage boy without the emotional vocabulary to navigate the complexities of Rory's world. Unlike Jess or Logan, Dean was never written with layers of ambition or intellectual sharpness. He was grounded, steady, even simple. And instead of letting that evolve naturally, the show's writing turned him into a narrative obstacle. In that sense, he's less villain and more victim of how the story needed to move forward. So, where does that leave us? Dean Forrester might never have been the most exciting character, but he was never meant to be. He was Rory's first love, the safe beginning before the chaos of Jess and the privileges of Logan. He mattered because he was ordinary, and for Rory, that was both comforting and ultimately unsustainable. That's why Dean endures as such a fascinating figure. Not because he was perfect, or even because he was awful, but because he was flawed in a way that feels very real to so many people's first relationships. But now, I want to hear from you. Do you see Dean as unfairly maligned, Or do his red flags outweigh the sympathy? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's get into it. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow Gilmore Girls fans. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time for more deep dives into the classics of early 2000s TV.